Welcome to NishaTube. In today's video, we'll be discussing the Rajya Sabha elections process. So this is the central point of all current affairs in this past week. And the reason is that currently Rajya Sabha elections are taking place. But before we understand the current affairs, we have to understand the fundamentals. And we'll start with what is the Rajya Sabha. This is the agenda for today's video. By the end of the video, we'll cover all of these topics. What is Rajya Sabha? Why Rajya Sabha is important? How many members in Rajya Sabha? Tenure of Rajya Sabha members? How many seats RS elections are contested for? How are Rajya Sabha members elected from every state? Who elects RS members? Who conducts the RS elections? And the constitutional provisions that facilitate the existence of RS. So, RS is an acronym for Rajya Sabha, and for simplicity purposes, I'll be using RS in this video. I could also be using Rajya Sabha. They can both be used synonymously. So, let's get started. Rajya Sabha is known as the Council of States, and it's the upper house of the parliament. In India, the legislature is bicameral, meaning it has two houses, an upper house and a lower house. The lower house is called the Lok Sabha, or the House of People. And the upper house is the Rajya Sabha, or the Council of the States. The functions of RS is to pass the government bills to the president. So any legislature or a bill is formulated by the legislature, or it's passed by the lower house or the Lok Sabha first. And once the Lok Sabha gives its assent, it's carried forward to the Rajya Sabha. And once the Rajya Sabha, once 2/3 of the Rajya Sabha members also approve and ratify any bill, it's sent to the president, and once the president gives his final assent, the bill becomes a law. So Rajya Sabha has a critical role in passing government bills and transforming them into laws. Another function is to keep a check on the Lok Sabha. As a part of this democratic system and power sharing scheme, we've adopted a checks and balances system where every government institute, or every branch of the government, the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary, can keep checks and balances on each other and prevent concentration of power in the hands of one branch or one institution. So that's why, to prevent the Lok Sabha from being overpowered, the Rajya Sabha can keep a check on this institution. That's why it's the upper house. And also, the Rajya Sabha is constitutionally empowered to impeach the president in case of any constitutional violations. It can also remove powerful people from their positions, including the Chief Election Commissioner, Comptroller, Auditor General, etc. So the Rajya Sabha has extremely high powers. The chairman of the Rajya Sabha is the Vice President. So, why is the Rajya Sabha an important institution? Why can't there just be one house? Why did we have to adopt a bicameral legislature? The importance is that the Rajya Sabha usually brings together experts. The Lok Sabha members are elected by the people through direct elections. And while they know how to win the hearts of people and their natural leaders, they may not be experts in certain subjects. They're just leaders. They can lead the people, but the expertise required to lead the country towards development is only possessed by experts. So that's why the Rajya Sabha brings together experts in the fields of arts, economics, sciences, sports, etc. It also enables representation of the states because the members of Rajya Sabha are elected by the legislative assembly members of states. So the nation has a limited role. It's more powerful towards the states. So Rajya Sabha enables representation of states, and it brings together experts in fields such as arts, sciences, sports, etc. And the difference between Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, other than the power sharing system, is that Rajya Sabha is a permanent body, whereas Lok Sabha is dissolved every 5 years. Every 5 years the Lok Sabha is dissolved and a new 545 members enter during the elections, whereas Rajya Sabha is a permanent body. There are 250 members, 238 are elected from the respective states and UTs, and up to 12 members are nominated by the president for their excellence and expertise in art, science, economics, sports, etc. An example of someone nominated by the president includes the boxer Mary Kom. She was nominated by the president to be an MP in the Rajya Sabha on account of her skill in sports, boxing. The tenure of each Rajya Sabha member is 6 years. However, every 2 years, 1/3 of the members retire. This may seem confusing, and that's why I'm going to simplify this exact concept for you. So the first Rajya Sabha session was held in 1952. And let's assume that this is what the Rajya Sabha looked like in 1952. This is what the House looked like. A, B, and C each represent 1/3 of the House. So 1/3 of the members are in A, 1/3 of the members are in B, and 1/3 of the members are in C. And all of these three combined together make one House. So in 1952, that was the first Rajya Sabha session, and it had members from A, B, and C. 2 years later, all the members in A retired. So 1/3 of the population of the Rajya Sabha, 1/3 of the members retired. It was not voluntary, it was forced or coerced retirement, and it was only this generation that had a tenure of 2 years. And it's just something that had to happen to ensure the consistency of the 6-year tenure concept. So 1/3 of the members retired after a term of only 2 years. So now in 1954, a new 1/3 members were elected, and that's D. So A retired, and as a replacement for A, a new 1/3 or new 33% came in, and those were D. They were elected in the group D. So now in 1954, 2 years after the first Rajya Sabha session, we have group B, C, and D. Each group comprises 1/3 of the total Rajya Sabha membership. Now fast forward 2 years, in 1956, now B retires, so another 1/3 of the population retires, and now we have a new group E, which comprises a new 1/3. So C, D, and E. B also retired. So the first Rajya Sabha session was in 1952. That means A served for 2 years, and B served for 4 years. So these two groups weren't able to serve their entire 6-year tenure. But starting from C, all the members will be able to serve their 6-year tenure. Now keep in mind this is just representative purposes. Usually the 1/3 people that retire, it's completely arbitrary and it's no basis of age or anything like that. It's completely arbitrary. So in 1956, C, D, and E were the three groups, or 3 1/3s that formed the Rajya Sabha. And fast forward another 2 years, in 1958, C officially retired. And so now we have a new group, F. So D comprises 1/3, E forms 1/3, and F forms another 1/3. And so C was able to serve the full tenure of 6 years. And from now on, every single group will be able to serve 6 years. So while the tenure is 6 years, 1/3 of members are forced to retire after 2 years. And this is in a goal to promote the welfare of the states, because they want different representation every 2 years. And they want to increase diversity in the House. So, starting from 1958, every group served a term of 6 years. And elections to Rajya Sabha take place every 2 years, meaning it's biennial. So this year is 2022. It's an even year, so that's why elections are taking place this year. The last Rajya Sabha elections took place in 2020, 2018, 2016, and so on. So this year is the Rajya Sabha election year, and the elections are currently taking place right now. But how are these members elected? Is it as simple as the general elections or the Lok Sabha elections? That's where you're wrong. You see, Rajya Sabha elections are extremely complicated, but don't worry, I'll make it as simple as possible for you. The members voted by MLAs, the members of the Rajya Sabha are voted by MLAs of every state. So we know that every state, the legislative body or the governing body is the Vidhan Sabha or the Legislative Assembly. And every constituency of the states elects MLAs. The representation of each state in Rajya Sabha is not evenly dispersed, and the number of Rajya Sabha members per state varies depending on the population of the state. For example, the state of UP has a population of 22.8 crores. It's the highest population in the country. That's why they have the highest number of seats, 31. Whereas Odisha has a mere population of 4.5 crores, and it reciprocates in terms of the number of Rajya Sabha seats, which is only 10. So normally all the general elections in India take place through the first past the post voting system. So whoever gets the most votes wins, and each person can only vote for a single candidate. Whereas in Rajya Sabha elections, it takes place through single transferable vote (STV) system. And this is a preferential voting system which is based on rankings as opposed to choosing one single candidate. So the ballot looks like this. We have three candidates, X, Y, and Z. In traditional voting, we would choose the candidate that we think is most suitable for the position of power. So we only choose one candidate. We can choose Y. Whereas in STV, single transferable vote, we have to rank the candidates based on our preference. So if I think that X is the most suitable, Y is the second most suitable, and Z is the third most suitable, I would rank them in that order, 1, 2, 3. In order to win a Rajya Sabha seat or secure a position in the Rajya Sabha, you have to meet a certain voting quota. So that's a minimum number of votes that's required to win a seat. And the quota, or the votes to win, is equal to a certain formula, and that's the value of the vote divided by the number of vacant seats plus 1, and you add that entire expression plus 1. The value of the vote is equal to the number of MLAs times 100. So in the single transferable vote system, the candidate which meets the quota or the minimum requirement of votes to win will win the seat. So let's take an example of an imaginary state, and the reason I took an imaginary state because I can modify these numbers for simplicity. So in this legislative assembly of our imaginary state, there are 90 seats, and from that state, there are 2 vacancies for Rajya Sabha seats. Remember that after a tenure of 2 years, or the biennial elections, not all the seats are available, only depending on the 1/3 members that retire. And the 1/3 of the members that retire, they could be hailing from a variety of states. There's no rule that all of them have to be from the west, north, east, or south. A few of them could be from the west, a few of them from the south, a few of them from the northeast. It's completely arbitrary. So there can only be a few vacancies, and in some states there are no vacancies at all. For example, in the 2022 Rajya Sabha elections, there are only 4 states that have vacancies in the Rajya Sabha. That means only in these 4 states there is 1/3 of retirement. So, coming back to our example, there are 90 seats in the Legislative Assembly of our state, and there are 2 vacancies for Rajya Sabha position. So the votes to win is equal to the value of the vote, which is the number of MLAs times 100, divided by 2, the number of vacancies, plus 1, and you add this entire expression plus 1. So that's 9,000 divided by 3 plus 1, and that gets us to 31 votes to win. So any candidate has to gain 31 votes in order to win a seat in the Rajya Sabha. But based on this preferential voting system or ranking system, how are candidates elected? So suppose in the ballot that I submitted, I chose the first rank was X, second rank was Y, and third rank was Z. And after counting the votes, we were able to yield the results. And 35 members of the Legislative Assembly believed that X should be number 1. So they gave first rank to X. 25 people gave first rank to Y, and 20 people gave first rank to Z. So on this basis, since 31 votes are required to win, the first seat goes to X, since he already secured the quota of votes. Now, since there's 2 vacancies, there has to be one more candidate that secures a seat. So now we go to the second person with the second highest votes. So 25 people thought that Y should be first rank. And the votes of the last or the lowest rank goes to the votes of the second rank. So the votes of Z, 20, go to Y. And so Y now has 45 total votes, meaning it also met the quota and it can have 45 votes. So that's why X and Y will be the candidates that are selected for the Rajya Sabha. So now let's get into the practical. The 2022 Rajya Sabha elections. There are 16 seats up for grabs and they're spread out across 4 states. So which organization, which statutory body conducts the elections? The Election Commission of India, or the ECI, conducts all general elections, including both houses of parliament, state legislative assembly elections, etc. And what are the constitutional provisions that establish and facilitate the existence of Rajya Sabha? So Article 84 defined and established Rajya Sabha as the upper house of parliament, and it also specified the powers that I mentioned earlier. So the power to pass bills and turn them into laws, the power to impeach the president and remove other powerful positions from government, such as the Chief Election Commissioner. So now let's look at a MCQ on the topic. This might crop up on the prelims examination for UPSC. So the question is, which of the following statements is not correct about the Rajya Sabha? 1. Rajya Sabha is a permanent body. B. It was duly constituted for the first time on April 3rd, 1952. C. 12 of Rajya Sabha members are nominated by the president. Or D. 1/3 of its members retire every year. So, if you paid attention and concentrated throughout the video, this question will be a piece of cake. So I request you to think about it and type your answers down in the comments below. So thank you so much for watching, and until the next one, this is Nisha Troop signing off.